Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. Let's launch into a new episode of Rock and Read. Today we'll knock out Chapter 41 and Chapter 42 of Iron Man by the riffmaster from Black Sabbath, Tony Iommi. Why don't we dive right in to Chapter 41. For the Technical Ecstasy tour, we didn't have a very big production. Just musical equipment, a snow machine, and dry ice. Nothing fancy. No coming in through the stage or flying in from the rafters. But Bill had this brilliant brainwave of having a big seashell built behind his drums. It was made out of fiberglass, and it was loud as it projected the sound. And every night he had tons of fresh flowers around his kit as well. He started getting more loony, but the shell was better than his original idea, where he wanted all these tubes around his kit with water going through it, changing color. He had all these fancy ideas. They were great until you tried to get them to work. Impossible. We started touring America in October. We had acts like Boston, Ted Nugent, Bob Seger, and the Silver Bullet Band supporting us. The shows were all sold out. At the Halloween gig in Denver, Heart opened for us. When we were playing, two girls stood on the side of the stage to watch us, and Albert threw them off because he thought they were groupies. He said, them two off. They were on the side of the stage, dancing around. I said, that was the other band. What band? Heart. Oh, no. Linda Blair from the movie The Exorcist came to our gig in New Haven, Connecticut. Ozzy was a bit infatuated with her, probably because he had seen the movie. Or maybe he identified with her because in the movie she also peed all over the place. As a matter of fact, we all were very impressed by Linda once. We went to see The Exorcist at a cinema in Philadelphia a couple of years before, and it scared the out of us. Back at the hotel, we went into the bar to have a drink to calm ourselves down. The television there showed a program with this priest talking about exorcism. That made it even worse. We got so scared that none of us could sleep, so we spent the night in the same room. Just pathetic. The bar of our hotel in New Haven had a glass wall behind it, so you could see into the swimming pool. Albert Chapman and me had a few drinks, and we got this great idea. Why don't we go out there and jump in with no clothes on? And so we did. It was one of those stick your arse against the window deals. I don't know what they must have thought in the bar. Absolute madness. When we got out, we needed a quick getaway, so we nicked a golf cart that was parked there. Two grown-up, undressed men in a golf cart driving around the hotel grounds. We made it back to the room, dried off, got dressed, and went back into the bar like nothing had happened. Most of the people didn't even know it was us, because all they had seen was two arses up against the window. A pretty picture. We had met Frank Zappa at a party in New York a couple of years before. He took us all out to a restaurant, telling us how much he liked Snowblind. It was very kind of him, and we became friends. On December 6th, we played Madison Square Garden, with Frank introducing the band. He wanted to play as well. We put his stuff on stage, but we had a really bad night. Frank was waiting to walk on, and I thought, he can't. It's disastrous. Everything is going wrong. My guitar is going out of tune. There's noises and crackles and God knows what. So I said to him, it would be best if you don't play, really. We got on well with him. In fact, later on, with Ronnie James Dio, I phoned Frank because Geezer had left. I said, you don't know any bass players, do you? He went, yeah, you could use mine. No, we want a bass player that might be with us for a long time. Me and Ronnie went over to his house. Frank opened the door with a parrot on his shoulder. He said, "Do you want a drink? A soda? Iced tea?" We were thinking more along the lines of a beer. No beer. All he had were the more hippie sort of drinks. We went down to his studio and he said, "Can I play you my new album?" "Yes, please do." I like some of his stuff, like Hot Rats, but when he played me this new album, it wasn't my cup of tea at all. There was so much going on, and it was such off-the-wall stuff that I couldn't absorb it. I thought, well, I don't want to be rude. What am I going to say to him when it stops? Because he's going to go, "What do you think?" And he did. "What do you think?" What was that on the third track? That, oh, that was... He started to explain the whole thing. "That's these drums, and I only went there looking for a bass player." As a musician, I think Frank was very clever, especially at arranging, and his band was tight as... When I went to see them once in Birmingham, he said, "I've got a surprise for you tonight." Ah? They played Iron Man. I was in the bar, and I heard them play it, and I thought, bloody hell. I went back out, and I thought, I'll thank him after the show. But he had such a bad night that he stormed off stage, really pissed off. So I thought, I don't think I'm going to go back. Even so, it was a nice surprise. It was on this Technical Ecstasy tour that the mysterious Tony's twin was lurking about. This bloke plagued me for many years. Tony's twin dressed up like me. He had a mustache, and he was a guitar player as well. He made his own thimbles and even started marketing them and selling them. He turned up at our hotel all the time, and people would think he was me. Eventually, it fizzled out. Although I heard from this guy again not too long ago through my website. He sent a picture of him playing, but he doesn't look the same now. He shaved his mustache off and everything. Very peculiar. There was another bloke who plagued me later on. He claimed to be my son. He was about 50, so I don't know how he could possibly be my son, but he insisted he was. He used to find out where I was and phone up. My second wife, Melinda, answered the phone one day, and it was him saying, "It's Tony's son." Of course, it threw her altogether. She thought I had a son then. "What do you mean you've got a son?" "I haven't got a son. I just spoke to him." This guy actually changed his name to Iommi. Some band even made a record about him. It was titled something like "Practicing to be Tony Iommi." Well, that's the end of chapter 41, so let's keep going to chapter 42. Preparing for the recording of Never Say Die, we were trying to write songs, but it was hard. While we were touring America, punk happened. We even had the Ramones supporting us. I wouldn't want to put them down at all, but I think that was a wrong match. They didn't go down well, and were getting things thrown at them all the time, so we had to take them off the tour. I didn't know whether I liked this punk stuff. Aggression is one thing in the music, but when it comes to spitting and cutting yourself, it just seemed a little bit far off to me. But I liked some of the songs, certainly later, and some credited Black Sabbath as an influence. I thought, oh, I can't see that somehow. Punk coming in threw us a bit. The Stranglers were at #1 at that time. I remember Geezer saying, "We're a bit old hat now with all these riffs and stuff." I almost felt like, God, what am I going to come up with then? And again, the other guys used to go down to the pub, and then they'd come back asking, "Have you got anything?" "No, can't think of anything." Writing became very difficult, especially after Geezer sang that. It felt like we didn't believe in what we were doing anymore. I felt hurt. I kept thinking, if I'm going to come up with a riff, then they'll probably say, "Oh, can't we do something else?" The guys didn't say that, but I felt like they would. All this when I had already booked a recording studio in Toronto, so the pressure was mounting. Then Ozzy left. He just didn't want to do it anymore. It was a really difficult period for us, but we never considered packing it in. We asked ourselves, will he come back? He might change his mind. We don't know. But we also said, we can't just sit here. We have to do something. Me and Bill knew this singer from old, Dave Walker, from the time when he was in a local Birmingham band called the Red Caps. He later sang with Savoy Brown and Fleetwood Mac and had moved to San Francisco. I remember him having a good voice, so we got in touch with him. We were grasping at straws, really, thinking, we're here to write an album, we have a studio booked, and we have no singer. We rehearsed with Dave for a while and wrote 2 or 3 songs with him. Word got out to the press, and we even did a local Birmingham TV show with him, but we just didn't feel it was right. Then Ozzy said, I'm sorry, and all that, and he came back. We told Dave, and he went. However, Ozzy didn't return until 2 or 3 days before we were due to go into the studio in Toronto. We couldn't cancel that because we had paid a lot of money up front, but we still had no songs apart from the 3 we had done with Dave, and Ozzy wouldn't sing those. We went to Toronto, and it was absolutely freezing. We each hired apartments close to the Sound Interchange Studios. We also hired a cinema with a stage in it to write and rehearse the new songs. We worked here from 9 o'clock in the morning in the freezing cold because the place had hardly any heating, and then at night we went to the studio to record. It was just totally wrong for us. Up to that point, we'd write something and then live with it for a bit, giving the songs time to grow. Do we like it? Let's change this bit, or let's change that. In Toronto, we never had that luxury. That's why to me, Never Say Die is very much off the wall. There are some tracks I liked on it, but it's hard to relate to that album because of the way it was done. It was a bitter time for us. Accidents never come singingly. The studio turned out to be. I had booked the place, so it was my fault. I just chose it based on the list of the names of people who had used it before. It was really expensive, but the sound was weak, so me and the engineer tried to get a bit of live sound in there by pulling all the carpet up. The owner of the studio heard what we were doing, so he came down barking, "What's going on?" I said, "We just can't get a good sound. It's weak." "You can't pull the carpet up." "Well, we did. It's rolled up." It was a nightmare. They said the Rolling Stones had used the studio, but maybe they just did some overdubs or something. I actually bought a stereo that had been left behind by Keith Richards because I wanted to play music in my apartment. It had all these marks on the top of the speakers where somebody had been chopping up. We just smoked a lot of dope at the time. One day, I smoked a little too much and I said, "I've got to go to my room." My apartment was 3 floors up. I used the stairs as I didn't want to bump into anybody in the elevator. I walked up, put my key in the door, went into the room, put the light on, and thought, strange, it looks different. It's all been decorated. It's got wallpaper and everything in here. I don't know why I didn't stop there. I walked into the bedroom, and there was a guy and his wife in bed, and they shot up, and I had the shock of my life. They screamed, and I went, "Ah!" screaming right back at them. I just couldn't get my head together at all. So I said, I'm sorry, I must be in the wrong room," and shot out of there. I had walked up 1 floor too many. My key had fitted in their door, which was really peculiar. I got to my own apartment, and the next day, the super came by because my upstairs neighbors had made a complaint. I said, "Well, my key shouldn't have fitted their door." I told them what happened, conveniently forgetting about the fact that I was stoned. Despite the cold and the dope and the studio, we did manage to record an album. I actually sang backing vocals on A Hard Road. It was the first time I ever did that. And the last, because the other guys couldn't keep a straight face. I was singing away, looking at them, and Geezer was cracking up. I had to keep singing, and he kept laughing. It was really embarrassing. Never again. Swinging the Chain was a track that we originally did with Dave Walker. Ozzy refused to sing it, but we had to record it anyway, because otherwise we wouldn't have enough to fill an album. Bill said, "Well, I'll sing it then." And so he did. We kept the music, and Bill just rewrote the lyrics. It's not like Ozzy didn't want to do Over to You either, but he couldn't think of anything to sing on it, so we ended up bringing in these sax players instead. It was a real funny period for us, what with Ozzy leaving and coming back. Going into the studio to record this album, it was very iffy. And of course, Ozzy didn't last much longer anyway after that. He actually did end up doing one song we did with Dave Walker earlier, whether he knew it or not. Geezer wrote the lyrics for it, and we called it Junior's Eyes. The title track, Never Say Die, was released as a single, the first one since Paranoid. We said we would never do another single, because we were attracting a lot of screaming fans. But it had been a few years, so what the... It got in the English charts, and we even did Top of the Pops with it. Again, that was a weird show to do. Bob Marley was on the program with us. Bill at that time had his hair braided, and everybody thought he was taking the mickey out of Bob. It wasn't like that at all. It was just the way he happened to have his hair in those days. All in all, it took us quite a while to record Never Say Die. We plodded on, I suppose. We didn't not get along. We always got along. But it was hard work, much harder than it had ever been before. In the circumstances we put ourselves in, it was really difficult to make an album, and I felt a lot of pressure doing it. It was expensive as well. It wasn't just the studio, but we also had to live there. We all became shoppers, going to the supermarket with our trolleys, getting our groceries, and coming back in thick snow. Shopping was also a reason to get out of the apartment, to go somewhere different for a change. And we went to this club on the corner of the road we lived on called the Gas Works. The supermarket and the club down the street. So much for entertainment. Never Say Die was doomed from start to finish. Ozzy leaving, trying out Dave Walker, it threw the whole thing out of whack. The album was just done day by day, so there was no format to it. You couldn't sit back and think, "Oh, I can see that leads into the other." The songs didn't relate to each other. It was so off the wall. The audience must have thought this as well. What's going on here? Again, it was, we don't need a producer. We can do it ourselves. That wasn't just me saying it. That was all of us. But it would have been far better if we had used a producer. We certainly realized that when we did our next album, Heaven and Hell. Having a producer involved takes the strain off. Starting May 1978, the Never Say Die tour bounced back and forth between the UK, Europe, and the States, with Van Halen opening for us all the way through until the end in December. Even though they still were relatively new, they were really good. They watched us play almost every night, and we became close friends. I'd see Eddie a lot. I always had a bit of coke, and he'd come around to my room, and we'd talk, as you do. To me, Eddie Van Halen was so different from all the other guitar players who were around back then. The finger tapping, although he doesn't call it that, was a great technique. They were a really energetic band, and they were going down great. They made us look a bit drab, really, as they did all this acrobatic stuff, what with David Lee Roth doing somersaults on stage, and who knows what else. Good showmanship, great players. You could see that they were really going to take off. It was a great tour, but in our camp, there were signs of cracking. Ozzy wasn't happy. Possibly losing his father had something to do with that. In the autumn of 1977, just before Ozzy left the first time. Ozzy's dad was a great, lovely guy, but we never really spoke about it. Maybe Ozzy just wanted to get away from it all for a while, to deal with whatever hang-ups he had. But we didn't have that luxury, so we couldn't take time off. It got to the point where we just plodded on. We had achieved quite a lot. We had enjoyed success. We all owned homes and cars. Everybody was comfortable. Perhaps we got too comfortable, and we lost our drive, the aggression of wanting to go out and fight for it. We also thought we're getting too old for this, because we saw younger bands coming up like Van Halen. We actually weren't even that old, but we were in comparison to most of the new bands. When we did interviews, the question always was, how long are you going to be doing this? Don't you think it's about time to pack it in? We were only 35 years old, and they started talking about us retiring. We were becoming old hat, and I think the spark had gone. Everybody was thinking, we're just going through the motions of it really, and we were playing an album we didn't even like ourselves. We played the Hammersmith Odeon on June 10th and 11th, 1978, and that was our 10-year anniversary. 10 years was a long time. Van Halen with David Lee Roth didn't last 10 years. We recorded those shows and released that recording as a live home video cassette at that time. It was called Never Say Die, but the band was not at all well, and even though the patient was still up and about, the illness ultimately proved to be terminal. Well before Ozzy left us for the second time, he went missing. In November, he disappeared before a show in Nashville. Supposedly, he had a bad throat. We checked into this hotel, and he drank a bottle of night nurse cold and flu medicine. You're supposed to have just a few spoons, but he downed the whole bloody bottle. He went to his room, but ended up in the wrong one. He saw this room open. There was a maid in there. She came out, and he went into that room, passed out on the bed, and that was it. Meanwhile, his bags had been sent up to his own room. We were doing a show on the night, but no Ozzy. Oh, blimey. We phoned his room. Nothing. So we got the guy to go and open the door. His suitcase was still there, all packed, and the bed was made. God, what happened? We started worrying then. What's going on? I wonder if he's gone down to the gig already. Why would he do that? We went to the gig first to see if he was there. No sign of him. We didn't know what to think. Then the rumor started that he had been kidnapped. We even got it advertised on TV, radio, and everything that he was missing. It was just unbelievable. And it was getting closer and closer to showtime. No show. We had to pull the gig, which really went down well. We left it to the last minute, thinking he might turn up. He had disappeared in the past and then just ended up in somebody's house, out of it, but never on a gig day. So we were half worried and half pissed off, thinking, we have a hall full of people. They are never going to believe us if we go on and say, we can't find Ozzy. We then really started to panic. Even though Van Halen played, the audience was going mad, and we had to get out of there quick. We got in touch with radio stations, and every 15 minutes they'd do a bulletin. Has anybody seen Ozzy? This went on, and we were awake all bloody night wondering what the hell was going on. Then Ozzy phoned my room. What's happening? Hell, what do you mean what's happening? Where the hell are you? I'm in my room. You're not in your room. Yes, I am. No, you're not. One of those. I took this night nurse. I don't know what happened. I passed out. So, that was the story. We were convinced he had been kidnapped, and that there was going to be some ransom note, but he was in the hotel. But Ozzy's disappearing act was only white entertainment in comparison with what would happen over the next couple of months. Things would only get worse. Well, that's the end of chapter 42 as well. Let me know what you thought of both chapters in the comments below. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Till then, rock on.